Hey. Friends. Hello, and welcome back to the Brickanista Broadcast Network. I'm Naomi, the Brickanista, based in Vancouver, Washington, and I'm here with my buddy P.T. Mcewen.
Hello.
How's it going, P.T.? In beautiful Southern California. How's it going?
Good. Nice and cool and sunny.
Cool and sunny. Oh, okay.
Yeah, summer hasn't stuck yet, as we say.
Well, last weekend, I was over in the Phoenix area, and it was 105 degrees Fahrenheit. And I was just melting because, as you know, here in Vancouver, Washington, in the beautiful Pacific Northwest, I left at, I think it was 60 degrees and went to a 45-degree difference.
Oh, wow.
It was like awful.
Wow.
Yeah. But, I had a chance to hang out with family and celebrated my birthday with them. And it was a lot of fun. But I tell you, when I got home, I was like, oh, thank goodness. It's actually raining, too. Yesterday it rained. I was like, thank goodness. I'm back where I belong. But so for those of you who are new to the Brickanista Broadcast Network, welcome. And we are so excited because we are resuming our LEGOMasters New Zealand reviews. We did get permission from TVNZ, and we are super excited because you probably remember last week we reviewed Season 2, Episode 1 with Robin Sather, who is the master judge. I don't. That's not the right term. It's Matariki Pareko. I know, I'm terrible. I should have written this down, but. Anyway, he's was with us last week, and this week we have a special guest with us, and he's one of the contestants who is on the show. So please help me welcome Angus Deacon.
Hey.
How's it going, Angus?
Hello. It's good afternoon in New Zealand, but good evening over your way.
It's great to have you here, and it's also fun because last year, or when we were reviewing Season 1. What happened, you don't know the history of this, but we were getting ready to review Season 3 of LEGOMasters US. And then what they decided to do is they pushed the schedule back to August, September. And it was kind of like, well, what are we going to do? And I said, well, I have some friends in New Zealand, and nobody's really covering LEGOMasters New Zealand. And there's 9 episodes. So I think we can do that in that span of time. So my co-host at the time, Remy Baker, and I, we did that, but it was on a Wednesday. And then the poor Kiwis, it was like, well, we're going to have to take like time off from work in order to do this because the show goes usually about an hour and a half. And so I said, okay, so PT, if you're okay with this, let's do this on a Friday because then it's Saturday for you. and we were really thankful that you're able to make time for us. And
I really appreciate it.
TV is in the house. Hey, Lene, welcome to the stream. Good to have you here. So anyway, just really thankful that you're here, Angus. And right before the show, you and I were having a really interesting conversation about just being a Kiwi in with a different background from typical, I guess, Kiwis. And you want to chat a little bit about that? About what's your background?
Yeah, sure. No, we were talking about it. I'm a sort of a hybrid, a mixed race of part Malaysian, part Scottish, and grew up in New Zealand. And when you think about the quintessential New Zealand bloke, they're very much into rugby. They're usually pretty stocky, pretty bulky. They might be wearing gumboots because they're a farmer, but difficult sometimes fitting in, being smaller and not being sort of able to identify with the different cultures that were around me. And I think it's probably only in the last 10, 15 years that I've sort of found myself through travel and finding my own cultural roots.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're also you're in Wellington, which is also nice because it's more of a bigger city and more of a melting pot, very similar to Auckland.
That's right. More of a metropolis. That's right. And obviously things have changed as well over the years. When I was a kid, when I was younger, it wasn't this culturally diverse.
And we were talking because I'm a mixed race as well. So I'm half Japanese, half Chinese, and a little bit of Polynesian in there, according to a DNA test. So I don't know where the 45% would be, but I've really embraced the Kiwi culture. And it's funny that you talk about rugby, because part of it is I learned about watching rugby from a friend of mine, and I taught him about American football. And so I'm wearing, for those of you who aren't familiar with this, by the way, let me say hello to Spot the Magic Ninjas in the house. Hey, and Alexander23Z, welcome to the stream. So for those of you who don't know, this is the National Rugby League symbol, which is a kiwi. So you can see that. And it's got a little silver fern there. And I actually, in Wellington, got to watch, it was, I think, the Kiwis versus the Kangaroos who were playing. And we won that year. It was, I think, 2015 in the big Wellington Stadium. And I had a chance to get introduced to the sport. And then my friend, who really likes just sports in general, he could never understand why in American football, and maybe P.T, I don't know if you're a fan of American football, that he could never understand that when we have a big lead at the very end, we do something called taking a knee. And it's just to run the clock down. It's like they stop playing, right? So it's like the quarterback will snap the ball, and then the quarterback takes a knee. And then my friend was like, what are they doing? It's like, why isn't the ball in play? It's like, well, it's like a 40-point difference. It's kind of like, it's not going to make a difference. He goes, New Zealanders, we always play to the very end. And I think too, what's been interesting about just the New Zealand culture is that it's interesting too that Lego has become very prominent in the last several years. And I think if I read correctly in one of your reviews, did you get into the hobby more after the last couple of years because of the pandemic too? It seems like a lot of people have been getting into the hobby more and discovering it.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense when you're locked down and there's nothing else to do. I think it was Carson. I think it was my mate who sort of rediscovered Lego. For me, I've always sort of had a bit of what's the best way to describe it? A passive love of Lego. I mean, I do love Lego, don't get me wrong, but not a huge collector. I've got Lego behind me, so I'm not going to lie about that.
We're going to give you a full screen.
I haven't been to brick shows. I haven't been to conventions and displayed and many things that are my own creation. So LEGOMasters was sort of the first opportunity there where I could build at scale with that beautiful brick pit that basically helped me unleash my creativity. But I've always loved Lego since I was a kid. I was introduced to Lego at 8 years old. And I remember my first was with my grandma. I still remember it was classic space, so you can't go wrong there. But I didn't have a huge amount of Lego when I was a kid. We didn't have much money when I was younger. And a lot of my Lego was hand-me-downs. So my cousins would bring around a bucket of it. And what I loved about it was that you could create whatever you wanted. It was only limited by your imagination. And for a family that didn't have a huge amount of money, it was like the ultimate toy because it didn't matter how much you had. You could create worlds, you could create creatures. And so I guess that's always been a part of who I was as a kid. I think it helped me become the creative person that I am now. I nearly ended up being an accountant. I've got a commerce degree.
Wow.
And,
wow.
I'm very grateful that I didn't pursue that. I mean, I've got the degree, but halfway through it, I started to do illustrations, comics, and drawings, and get that creativeness out of me. And then I was probably lucky enough to get a portfolio. Then I went into the design industry, and I've been creative ever since. And I think Lego is very much the reason that I think that helped me sort of unleash a lot of my creativity. And then being a poor student, I couldn't buy Lego, obviously. And so I think what's happened is that now that I'm an adult, and I did buy quite a bit of Lego during the lockdown, I'm now making up for what I didn't have when I was a kid. You know how you have that, but now I've also got money, which is a dangerous combination. And so I've sort of
reliving your childhood. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, the childhood that I wished I had. I used to spend hours looking through catalogs and just wishing that I had those sets. And now, dangerously, I can go out and buy those sets.
I think you and I have a similar background in that way, because I didn't, my family didn't have a lot of money either. And in the school systems here, they would have Lego in the classroom, and they would like dump all the Lego on a blanket. And then we would have to like scramble to build the things that we wanted to. And then at the end of the day, you have to tear it apart and put it back in the bucket. So it's very similar. Now I have this massive collection, and somebody asked me, how many pieces do you have? I go, I have no clue. But whenever I get a chance to go to the pick a brick wall in a Lego store and stuffing things, making every use of every nook and cranny in there. Do you go to the Lego store often?
Well, I'll talk about that in a second, but I can only imagine the blanket full of Lego at school when everyone's rushing. It must have been like Mad Max, where it was just
it was
first one there is
too bad, because they were monitoring us. And if you ever go to a Lego show, they usually have a similar model when they have the pit area for the kids, is that they have usually carpet or blankets. And then they have buckets of Lego, and then they let the kids, play with them. Sometimes they let them take home what they create, and other times they say, okay, it's time to take it apart and put it back in so other people can use it. But
there's one thing I would love to do with Lego in schools is that Lego is very expensive. It's not that affordable. And there are a lot of schools in New Zealand that are quite rural, low socioeconomic areas. And I think it would be amazing if the government here could subsidize something like Lego and bring into some of those poorer schools. So it's something that's been on my mind a little bit, is to how can we get Lego into more schools. But to answer your question about the Lego store, so Wellington's a weird place. We're the capital city of New Zealand, but we don't have an official Lego store.
What?
Which is quite embarrassing, right?
That is embarrassing, because isn't Dan Mulholland also in Wellington too? I think he was from season 1. And then there's, I think Jake Roos might also be in Wellington too. It's like, wow.
And there's a few of us from season 2. So the only Lego store we have officially is up in Auckland. And apparently they're going to build one down in Christchurch, I think ready for next year, maybe ready for Christmas. And so I just go to a Lego store here in Wellington. I can't just go to a pick a brick wall. I have to travel all the way up to Auckland, which is like an hour's flight away, for those who don't know. Which, it's a bit odd. But I've been to many Lego stores around the world, so I know what you're talking about. And I fill up those buckets, those containers.
You stuff them to the top,
Yeah, and there's that strategy, right, where you put the big things that you really want first, and then when you start to realize how much space, you grab all the tiny little things, and you try and gather them so they
shake it.
Fill the gaps. But we just don't get that opportunity here in Wellington. Hopefully that changes, but I haven't heard any rumors about us opening it yet.
That might be a reason to fly down there, is the opening of the Lego store in Wellington. It's like, Brickanista, you haven't been down here in a while. Maybe you should come. There's a Lego store opening.
Yeah, there you go.
Do you have any questions, PT, as well?
No, I was going to save those, I think, towards the end of the broadcast, and more about him and what he's up to.
And then we have a comment in the chat from Alexander23Z. Yeah, it's always interesting how our art medium alter throughout our lifetimes. And I think, too, that when Lego strategically decided to target adults, and they went with the adults welcome themes, that we're seeing this renaissance of more AFOLs who are coming to the hobby. And also, of course, LEGOMasters New Zealand and all the other versions around the world, too. And we do have some prepared slides as well that we'll have a chance to chat through. So for those of you in the chat, if you haven't seen the episodes, there are going to be spoilers. So just so you know.
All right. You ready here?
Oh, Brick Jedi's here. Hey, how's it going, Mo? Good to see you.
All right. Boom.
There's our title card.
So you want to talk a little bit about how you and Karsten got your journey to Lego Masters? Now you guys got paired off?
Yeah, definitely. Because our story is quite different to most of the other contestants on the show.
Yeah.
We were the only team in season 2, possibly season 1, I can't quite remember, who didn't know each other going into the show. And what happened is my teammate pulled out just because it was a huge commitment in terms of time, and he had a young family, so he couldn't commit that sort of time. And Karsten's teammate also pulled out for personal reasons. And this was probably about a month before they started to really narrow down on their shortlist. And at that point, we thought, that's probably us. That's our journey over. But the talent person at TVNZ saw the fact that we were, roughly similar ages, and she thought maybe the two of us would want to partner up. And so we had one Zoom call, and at that point we were like, well, what have we got to lose here? Let's give it a try. And so we both did auditions, and I don't know how much of the audition process you guys have talked about. Do you know roughly what's involved in getting into the show here in New Zealand?
Well, I know that you are limited in what you can share because at least in the US, they're very strict about what you can say about the whole interview process. But if you're allowed, if you want to share what you had to go through, I can just share with you. I think, did you also apply, PT, for being on LEGOMasters?
No.
Okay.
No, I thought about it with a cousin of mine, but he didn't. He said yes, then he goes, no, I don't think so. He didn't want the pressure of building an attack. He likes the creative flow. Just
if you want to share, Angus, what you went through, and then we'll talk about the differences. But it'd be great to.
I haven't been told differently, so I'm just going to go for it. We'll see what happens. If the censors and everything gets shut down, then I apologize.
Oops.
But it was quite a casual process, and I think that might just speak a lot to New Zealand as a whole. But TVNZ had a website where you could go in and you could submit some of your details, but it was pretty light. It was obviously a bit about your Lego story. Why do you like Lego? Why would you want to be on the show? It was uploading a couple of photos of things that you'd built. And to be honest with you, at that point, I thought, oh, well, that's probably not going to be me, because a lot of the 2 photos that I uploaded were just little minifig displays, because I don't build large-scale exhibition design stuff. So, but I did talk quite strongly about my passion for creativity and for Lego, and just the whole imagination spark that I think Lego revolves around a lot. And I also talked about the fact that I bring Lego into the workplace as a problem-solving tool to help teams unpack problems together in a fun, creative way. It's called Lego Serious Play, which I'm sure people know about. And after that, they shortlist down and they ask you to come in and do a test. So Robin and a director and a camera person came down to Wellington, and this is during the lockdown as well. So there are all sorts of travel restrictions. I think the original plan was for everyone to fly up to Auckland, and there would be a mass audition. But because of the restrictions on travel, we all had sort of individual pockets of auditions. At this point, I still hadn't met Karsten in the flesh, which was interesting.
Oh, at the audition in Wellington?
Yeah, because he was up in Auckland, and I was
in
down
Auckland.
Here.
Wow.
And so they hired out a hotel, and there was a convention room, big buckets of Lego on the tables. They had a camera person moving around. They had Robin talking as if you were actually on LEGOMasters. And we had 1 hour to build a particular thing. And the brief for my build was, how did you meet your teammate? which is interesting, right? Because I hadn't.
I'm meeting him right now.
Yeah, so that's when I was ready to walk out. But it was all about testing what you like on the spot. Like, can you build under pressure?
Right.
I had no idea to this day if that camera person actually was recording anything, or if he had a fake camera.
Oh,
he was
interesting.
putting in your face to try and, see what you like. But you have to talk as if you're on the show. You have to talk about what it is you're building. Robin would come over a couple of times in that hour and just check on you. Very similar to the environment that you would have on the show. Still pretty terrifying. I still remember it quite vividly. And the brief was an interesting one for me too. And at first I was like, do I build Karsten and myself and then the screen in between to
that's good.
And I was like, that's going to be pretty boring. And so what I ended up building was quite weird, and I think that may have helped me get on the show. But I knew that Karsten was from Denmark, and obviously the home of Lego. I'd seen some of the things that he'd built because he's had his work displayed at the Lego house over there. He's an amazing builder, and I was obviously quite intimidated by this. And so what I did is I also noticed there were a lot of yellow bricks. The bricks that they give you for this audition, they're very much just the standard bricks, the 2x4s, just a few minifig. Yeah. It's quite basic. And so I built a big Lego yellow castle.
Nice.
The very first Lego set.
Right.
Yeah. And I put a minifig of Karsten on the top, and I had this drawbridge, and then I was down on the other side of the moat. I was holding a tiny version of the yellow castle. So it was literally just two bricks.
Oh, you had like a little micro version?
And I'm waving, and he's smiling and waving, looking down. And the story I told was that's how I felt. I felt like I haven't really built anything, and here's my attempt at trying to. And it's like, hey, do you want to do this thing? And I think that story probably helped a lot. And I think Robin probably appreciated the fact that I thought outside of the box with it. But the audition happened, and Robin being pretty in judge mode, he didn't give a lot away. Okay, so we had no idea walking away from that audition. We had no idea what the other people were doing, what our level was like. And I think it was about 2 months after that we got told that we were going to be in the show. And Karsten was also doing his audition over in Auckland. And so the two of us were curious as to whether we'd both go through or one of us would go through. We just had no idea. But yeah, I'm really grateful that the two of us, a huge respect to the talent person who managed to team us up, because it could have gone horribly wrong. I'm not going to lie. We'd never built together before. I knew how good he was, but it's very different when you have to come together and symbiotically build something. There's a bunch of dynamics going on there with communication, build style, personal preference. But what seemed to work really well is that our skill sets complemented each other. So Karsten is an amazing technical builder. He was really good at creating architecture and buildings. And I liked creating creatures and telling stories. And so the two things just came together really nicely. And he let me...
It was phenomenal.
Yeah, thank you. He let me tell the story. He let me do the details. And he was so efficient. He would build... if you see the show, it's just a blur. His hands...
Several teams were like that. It was pretty amazing to watch. Yeah.
So it worked out well, and that's sort of our origin story. It's. I think we may have been a bit of a wild card, to be totally honest with you.
That's why they called you the New Alliance.
That's right?
That was your team name, is the New Alliance, and we talked about this with Robin last week. That a little difference with the U.S. is that they give names to the teams. That you're like the Thespians, I think, was the name of the team for Flynn and Richard of Tricky Lug in season 1, and every team had some interesting hook. And what was really nice about LEGOMasters New Zealand, it was just the facts. Like the two of you were a new alliance, others were married couples or siblings, and they just kept it like that instead of having to create this other persona for your team, right?
Yeah. No, I did like that. Absolutely. It's
Mhm.
again, I think it's very much a New Zealand thing.
And here's a nice comment. It sounds like the two of you had good clutch. And apparently, Planet Greta says they're sorry, cousin, that they didn't partner with you for the LEGOMasters. I think too in the US, I can just speak to a little bit of the process, is that there is an online form that you have to complete. And similar to what you were saying, you upload photos and then you have an interview with a casting person on Zoom. And I've been through the process twice and I have not gotten through. But I think what was interesting about it is that it's great that you got notified that you made the cut. But in the US at least, and I can only speak from my own experience, is that if you didn't make the cut, you were like completely ghosted. They didn't even send you like a regrets, like, sorry you didn't make the cut. Maybe if you did this to improve, none of that. And part of the reason why I know this, and hopefully I'm not speaking out of turn here, is that it turns out that my partner, her sister got on the show, and then she didn't find out about it until after the promo video showed up and she saw her sister, in posts on social media. And it was like, you could have just told us we're going with the sister instead of going, and it's just interesting because I know they're trying to build a show, and it's also a little more, at least in the US, they're playing up the drama and trying to have certain types of people in there. So in a way, I'm kind of grateful to some degree. It would be an honor to be on the show, but I also am concerned about kind of the drama that they built into the show, which isn't always necessary to do. And we talked about this with Robin last week, that he really appreciated that the New Zealand one is one that really focuses on the builds and focuses on the joy and the camaraderie, which is clear on the show, which was really great to see too.
Yeah.
It was like a family.
It really is.
It didn't feel like a competition most of the time.
Yeah.
Now we do have this.
So season 1, you guys, your first build. Just for those who haven't been there, haven't seen episode 1, not season 1. About you guys got mixed up with a certain movie genre, and so you guys had fantasy, and you guys had Duel of the Wizards.
Yeah. I was pretty happy when we got. So for those who don't know, the genres were randomly assigned, so everyone got given a Lego built ice cream, and party flavors that I don't even know if Americans would even know about, like goody gumdrops. Is that a flavor that you even have over there?
No, Hokey Pokey is not either, but I have tried Hokey Pokey when I went to New Zealand. It's similar to what we would consider butter pecan, I think.
Yeah.
So, but it was interesting. You could see actually the ice cream in the lower right corner there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, right there.
Because of color.
Yeah.
I mean, I just love that minty green color that was used. Quite an unusual color for Lego as well. And so we didn't know, and then they do the reveal, and everyone pulls off the lid. And I think fantasy was definitely good for me, but I think Pearl Caston. I mean, I'm just a huge geek, right? I love Lord of the Rings, and I love a whole bunch of sci-fi things as well. But Pearl Caston didn't really know what to do with this, and we saw that massive mountain in the background. So you probably can't see it here, but all the builds come together around this table, and they create a circuit where a train track goes around. It's quite common in most Lego monsters. But there was this big, beautiful gray mountain, and it just reminded me so much of Lord of the Rings. And the one thing you can't do in Lego Masters is you can never name a brand or a franchise.
Right.
So we can never say it was
Intellectual
Lord of the
property.
Rings. We never say it was Gandalf. Yeah. But I think most people reading between the lines could see with Duel of the Wizards that there was definitely a Lord of the Rings. And so we leaned into that quite heavily. I was thinking about, Saruman and his tower, the Black Ivory Tower. And as I mentioned before, I've always wanted to create creatures. I've always wanted to create beautiful looking monsters. And I never built anything of this size before, but I did the purple and yellow serpent.
Yes, that was a great choice of color too.
Yeah,
I'm still really happy with how those colors worked out. And then we had all these beautiful coral flower pieces, which sort of accentuated her ears and the tail. And we nicknamed her Shazza, the sea serpent.
They didn't say that. Shazza, huh?
Well, the other thing too, and maybe you know more of the Maori about this, that serpents, I think, are very auspicious too in the New Zealand culture.
Yes, and it's interesting that you say that. So there is a sea serpent thing called a taniwha here in New Zealand.
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking about.
And again, you've got to be very careful with cultural appropriation. So there was no way that we're ever going to refer it to that. But there are some elements to her face that are inspired by that for sure.
Brick Jedi says the sound is rad.
Thank you. And you can see the mountain in the background too that I was talking about.
Yes. And for those of you who want to see that visual, if you go back to our review of the episode 1, we do show the massive mountain with the different parts that all of the different contestants have to take their tables away and then build a movie set. Because that's the other thing that this whole thing was, you're building a movie set. And in this case, you mentioned not a brand, but the Duel of the Wizards. Right? I love the detail.
You can see our different build styles coming together. Like Karsten's doing the beautiful buildings in the background. I'm doing the creature. The one thing that wasn't clear on the show is that we're all given signature figs, minifigs of ourselves. They were given to us right at the beginning of the episode. So everyone had one. But the producers and Robin were never that clear as to what you should be doing with them. And so we incorporated ourselves into this build. So I'm riding the serpent and Karsten's in the tower. Unfortunately, it's really hard to find wizard robes. But we just couldn't, and so we had to build a real crude looking thing out of bricks. We're not very happy with that, but that's okay. We did what we had to.
I was going to say, we wouldn't have known if you didn't tell us. It's beautiful.
One thing about this build I don't like is that figure we're looking at right now. But yeah, it's got the two of us. So I'm riding the serpent, and in this, weirdly, despite the fact that we're teammates and we've just met each other, we are fighting each other. And it was meant to be a message around the fact that, we came into this thing, we didn't know how it was going to go down. We were really, really proud. Like I said, we'd never done anything before, not even small. And for us to be able to create this as our first build, and whilst learning about each other.
Yes.
Yeah.
I also just love the detail you put, like this, even the subtle detail of the serpent going into the water with the change of the color of the water and the arches that you built for the serpent and seeing it in multiple places, not just in the front. It just gives you this whole scale. This is a massive serpent that's all part of it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. And then also I get the tail moving, the motion there. Was there other motion or was it just the tail that moved?
No, it was just the tail. So as you guys watch more and more of the season, you'll notice that motors and moving things are not our strong point. And that becomes more of a weakness as we progress. We'd never used motors before. And this very simple, it's just this back and forth. And you're right, I love the effect that it creates. It is very basic. And we were given, I can't quite remember exactly what the set was, but it's the programmable robotics set.
Mindstorms, maybe?
Yeah, that
Mindstorms EV3 or the Spike
Prime?
No,
I think it was the Spike Prime or something like that. It was a white box with blue.
That's it.
I think.
So you could set in a few pre-animated motions, and so us getting pretty, 80-degree turn left and right, and then on a timer, probably took me a couple of hours. Even though I think it's only supposed to take a kid 5 minutes.
Well, it goes back to, like you said, the motors weren't your strength. And we've seen other episodes of Lego Masters in other countries too, where, if you're doing it for the first time, then that pressure is on versus other teammates. And I'm sure you're looking around the room because there were a couple other teams that had that as their background.
They were amazing. I mean, obviously, Jason and Charlie, two key examples of just how proficient they were with it.
Yeah.
We are going to have Jason next week.
Oh, cool.
So Rachel and Jason are going to be coming on the show next week. And for those of you who don't know, House of Bricks is their tag on Instagram. And he just posted this mechanical butterfly that is a steampunk butterfly, which is just amazing. So yeah, you're right. Absolutely right.
Well, you guys didn't do too bad this episode because you guys ended up winning that power brick.
Ta-da!
We did. Still a bit of a shock. I mean, don't get me wrong. We loved our build. We were really proud of it. But some of the other detailing, for example, Henny and Peter's build with the Mayan snakes and everything, absolutely gorgeous. Charlie and Ollie, the amount of movement they had in their story. And I mean,
the Banana Man,
it's amazing, right? So we're very surprised. We're very, very surprised. But the one thing that Robin was amazing at is his feedback for every challenge. It gave us a lot of confidence. I think he referred to us as the power team.
Last week he said that. He said you guys were the artistic power team that came in together. Yeah.
So I think at that point we realized that, hey, maybe this partnership could work out. The one thing you'll notice though is, I was saying before, how Carsten builds big, beautiful sculptures and I create creatures. Pretty much all of our builds throughout the entire season is building and then a creature. But that's okay. we make it work.
We're gonna have to look back at all those episodes now and say, oh, there's a little theme going on here.
Yeah, go to.
And just so people know who are watching, we are only going to review episode 1 and episode 2. But of course, Angus, you're always welcome to come back if later on if we want to talk more about some of that. We don't want to give out spoilers too soon because people are just being introduced to LEGOMasters New Zealand. And in some cases, people in the chat, this is the first introduction to the show.
Yeah.
All right, Naomi, you want to give the brief?
Yeah, this is something that I wish that they would do on all the shows. And when PT and I were talking about our show, I said, I want a slide that just says what the brief is, because sometimes it isn't very clear. How long is it going to take? What is it about? And in this case, the brief is you have 10 hours. And in that 10 hours, you need to build something called a mechanimal. So you are combining a mechanical type of device with a creature, some sort of animal. And each of you had a chance to spin this wheel. And I have this show called Mock Improv, where we randomly ask the audience about different ideas and we put it on a wheel and we spin it. And you have no idea what you're going to build in an hour. And you're always welcome to come to one of those if you want. So it reminded me of Mock Improv in that you have to spin the wheel. And then in your case, okay, good segue, is that you ended up with a spider. And I'm trying to remember the name.
A Weta and a submarine. The Weta.
You
didn't
get the Weta. You got the.
Oops. Oh my gosh! You know what? You're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he had the spider and the digger.
Yes, digger. That was it.
Spider and the digger.
Spider.
You're thinking about another team. You're thinking about the Harry.
My bad.
But so here are the spinners, which if it kind of made me laugh because when I first saw this, it looked like a pizza pie to me. It's like, are they going to build pizza? What are they doing? And, yeah. So that was good. And they used iconic animals of New Zealand and Canada, which I thought was funny because to honor our host, Robin, and then the different mechanical items that were on the far right. So the animals are on the left, and then the mechanical items are on the right.
Yeah, it was a really fun challenge. And like you, I love the fact that it was like random variables. There's no way you could have predicted or planned. I mean, we didn't know what the challenge was going in anyway, but there's no way you could have predicted any of these mashups.
Yeah.
Right.
So by having the power brick in that first episode, we were given the option of just choosing. Without having a spin, we could just go up and grab something that we wanted. But we had decided, as soon as we won the brick, we had decided that we were never going to use it for an advantage, because we always wanted it to be a level playing field. And we would only use it to save ourselves from elimination. So there's a few times where, you know, we don't. But we didn't want to, we just wanted to put it down into luck. And so we both spun the wheel. And yes, got an Avondale spider, which is sort of an elongated spider that we have in New Zealand. It's not poisonous. We don't. I think we've only got one.
I was just going to say, New Zealand doesn't have any poisonous anything. No snakes and no spiders. But you go to Australia and everything will kill you.
Yeah, that's right. Especially drop bears.
Yes.
And a digger. And I mean, we weren't going to change. I think actually at this point, once we spun, we could have changed our options. But it was a really cool challenge. I've never built like a machine, like a digger before. But Karsten was well up for the challenge. Karsten sort of focused on the caterpillar tracks and the bottom part. And I worked on the cab, which was the top part, and getting the spider face on that little digger part. And Karsten also worked on the legs. And then because we love to create stories around our builds is, can't quite remember, I think his name's Archibald, the arachno digger.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the previous slide, actually, is you had the name.
Yes,
Archibald the arachno digger.
Yeah. And so he's a single dad, because I'm a single dad, so I'm just injecting my own stories into this. And he's got 6 kids. I know you can only see 4 of them down below. He's actually got 2 little baby spiders stuck to his body.
Oh, okay.
And this is just his morning routine of just trying to get his kids out the door in the morning. I don't have 6 kids, by the way. I've only got 2.
Are they twins too? Did I read that you have twins, right? Yeah.
2 beautiful twins. So this is him trying to get his kids out the door ready for school. And I don't know if you've got a video of him moving around, but it's on my Instagram if you want to push that at the end. But his arms are sort of wobbling around all over the place, and he's not moving very, very smoothly. So again, we weave that into our story, is that he's, you know, it's 8 o'clock in the morning and he's doing his best. And the other kind of cute thing is his kids are part tractor, part digger, part spider. Right. So he's got kids that are just diggers, tiny diggers, and he's got kids that are tiny spiders. So quite weird, but we love the story and we love this challenge.
There's Angus's Instagram account for anybody who wants to take a look now. Angus_Deacon on Instagram to see that video.
After the broadcast, of course.
Well, they might want to see the context, but now the other thing that this reminded me of is, are you familiar with the Shrek movies? And there was the donkey hybrids with the dragons. So it kind of reminded me of this too, that you had all the babies that were a little bit, you know, hybrids too.
That's it. And you don't want to think too much about the logistics of that, right? So it's just best to just, that's it. You don't want to think about the physics.
Right. You don't want to go through the whole love story, right?
Yeah. You want to go in and talk, we can go in to the other teams and their builds for this episode?
Yeah.
That
was Harry and Andrew's build.
Yeah. This is the Weta submarine that you were just talking about.
Yeah, that's where I got messed. I was reading the wrong slide. Yeah.
Yeah. Harry and Andrew, they're amazing builders, and they come from an engineering background, and they engineer everything. And I think this is one of the builds where there's so much going on with. They were getting propellers to work from a centralized mechanism all the way through these spindly legs. It was was absolutely amazing. And then at the same time, they're trying to sculpt what I would say it must be one of the harder mashups. But they did an amazing job. And again, the yellow submarine joke, I don't know if they actually referenced that on the show, but there's an obvious
They did talk
Beatles
about
reference.
going to the brick pit and looking for as much yellow as they could find. And I think to your point earlier, I don't think they could refer to it as the yellow submarine because of the intellectual property. But they did say, we looked for as much yellow as we could find.
That's right.
And the other thing about Weta's, since you're in Wellington, I have been to that nature park over there, Zealandia.
Yes.
And they have this big Weta section. And the Wetas there, and I think Andrew may have mentioned this on the show, where when you first see one, it's kind of scary, but then they're pretty mild creatures. And Weta, I think, is also the name of one of the movie companies that's in Wellington as well.
Yeah, Peter Jackson runs.
Yes.
Obviously, they put a name for themselves with Lord of the Rings, but now they do everything. Like just about every single Marvel, Star Wars movie you see, at them somewhere in there.
Wow.
Yeah.
The other thing I like is they said biofuel is how it ran, is what they said was part of their storyline, and so you see it there munching.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. They had some great storylines in there too. I think one of my favorite builds was Amy and Louie, and they did a Tuatara mashup with a Formula One car.
Yes.
Which is the most insane mashup you can imagine, because I don't know if you've ever seen a Tuatara, but they don't move. They literally just
really.
I did see one over at Zealandia. Yeah, they have all of the native species are there.
Yeah. Did you see it move though? I bet you didn't, because they're very
No,
stationary.
it was. I think it was during an evening group effort. I did see a kiwi move though, because the kiwis come out at night, and so I was. In fact, it ran right in front of me, and they're tiny. Cool. They're really tiny, but we'll have to have a separate discussion about my trip to Zealandia. It was one of my favorite things to do. If you're ever in Wellington, folks, make sure Zealandia is on your list.
So they had to mesh up probably the most stationary reptiles you could imagine with a fast-moving Formula One car. And Amy is so funny. She's adorable, and she was making the noises of this car pretty much throughout the entire show. We hear it a little bit, but she was pretty much just going like the entire
That's funny.
Yeah, I love it.
She likes to build big too, because on her Instagram account, she has several large buildings that she's displayed.
Colors.
The colors in here, the eyeball, the way they shape the eyeball for the Tuatara too.
Very cool. So that's his tongue, which is one of the foils out the front of a Formula One car, but they built that in to be his tongue, and he's eating a bug. So just really nice little touches like that. Looking back on it, I think some of the teams had some really hard mashups, and they all delivered such amazing builds. I was a bit disappointed there weren't more Canadian animals, because there was moose, there was beaver. I think the only one that someone got was fox.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Actually, wild too.
Speaking of which, it's almost like we planned this. Every time you mention something, it's like, oh, we happen to have that slide.
So this is Jason and Rachel's, and that, again, fantastic use of the chainsaw in the tail, and
the motorization of this.
Yeah.
And the other thing I liked about the show is they also showed when he was having struggles with it, that you don't get it right on the first try. Yeah. That there were several iterations he had to do to get it where he needed it. Yeah,
that's exactly it. I mean, you got to edit this down to a 1-hour show, and at this point, there's so many teams. But it's interesting. I'm pretty sure that every single team had to pivot at some point in their building, and it could be because of time constraint, or it could be just the bricks that are available to you in the brick pit. As much as an amazing job as they did building brick pit awesome pieces, there was still some quite unusual things in there. So there were these red wings, just from, but there was only the left side wing, so there was no matching wing.
We see
really?
that all the time. Yeah. Contestants talk about how infuriating that is, because they only give you one side, and then where's the other side?
Quite unusual. I don't know what you're supposed to do with one side of the wing, which threw us in an episode coming up, but I won't talk about it yet. And then,
sorry, yeah, you'll have to wait till next week, folks.
Yeah, they also had baby minifigs. Is that what you'd call them? But they didn't have any heads. So you'd have these headless babies. So if you wanted to have a baby, yeah, it was great.
Wow.
So
that is so freaky.
Yeah. So
wow.
we made a baby one later. And if you look closely, you'll notice. I think I put a hat on it to try and cover it. Anyway,
you try. That's funny.
Better than a headless baby. And this is Charlie and Ollie's.
Yes.
And you can see Charlie's amazing mechanical skills coming through. And I think they talk about this in the show, that his original concept, I mean, this thing was basically walking around, and I think it was going to go up to people and talk to people at one point. The amount of robotics in this bird was insane. But as they started to bulk it out, he had to restrict some of the moving parts. But the thing was meant to go up and down and lay an egg. It was just genius.
The two of them are so much fun to watch too, just as siblings, right? Because you can see they have like a shorthand talking to each other.
True. Absolutely, the dynamic was incredible. And while Charlie was doing all of the technical machinery parts, Ollie's eyes were design and color.
Yeah,
like it was such a good mashup.
Yeah.
And this one laid eggs too.
It did. So they
in the end, it was supposed to walk, I think you said, and talk to people and then lay an egg, but it just did the up and down motion and dropped an egg every now and then.
I'm pretty sure Charlie would have made this thing fly around the room if he could.
Yeah.
I like how on the back, how they have that warning sign.
Yeah.
Like, stay away, watch out, there's going to be an egg dropping down here soon. Well, I mean, that little bit of comedy is just so much fun to see with this team.
Well, the story was it's a, what was it, mechanical bird that did, what was it, endangered. Those are endangered species, and so the eggs would pop out or something to that effect. So, yeah. So it was helping to repopulate. And the final two teams that stepped forward with their builds, Rachel and Jason, and Andrew and Harry.
Yeah. I think that Andrew and Harry really needed this because they put so much effort into their build, and I could tell that they weren't 100% happy with how it ended up, but their ambition for that build was just insane.
And the way the sculpting was so nice. Yeah.
Absolutely, right? Not an easy challenge to get whatsoever.
Yeah.
They went above and beyond. But then, of course, Rachel and Jason's chainsaw fox. I think it just ticked the boxes. I mean, you could tell straight away what it was. The fox tail being a working chainsaw was cool. And then Rachel was adding all sorts of little bits of detail to the story because there was a log and the chainsaw fox would come along and chop the log, and then things would come out of it, and that would be its food. So, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful build.
Yep.
So spoiler alert, folks, Rachel and Jason won this particular episode. Now, before we talk more about this, Peter and Henny were not in this episode. And how did you feel when that announcement came out? That I think it was a little awkward, wasn't it? For like, you already started the season, you have these 6 teams, and then for this one episode, you have 5 teams. And how did you respond to that when they said they weren't going to be there?
Yeah, I mean, Di always said expect the unexpected, but you certainly don't expect a team not to be there. I think it was quite a somber mood in that studio. I mean, again, I don't know how much you've spoken to previous contestants about Lego Masters as a whole, but there's a lot of smoke and mirrors. So when you first walk into that studio and you see the brick pit and you see all the lights, you're really excited and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. We made it. But they make you do that several times. Because they reset the cameras, right?
Right.
And so you walk into the studio pretending like it's your first time 4 or 5 times.
We have heard that there was a particular episode where the firefighters talked about this in season 3, where they had to run to get leashes for the dogs. And then they said, they had to do that multiple times. And then one time they knocked the table over and they go, oh, that's great. That's awesome. So yeah, you're right. It's a bit contrived, for television. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the energy is there, but, sometimes you've got to elevate yourself a little bit. And for the second episode, everyone's still super excited, but there's this feeling of, where is Peter and Henny? It was quite uncomfortable. And even having only 5 tables on the go was quite unusual. So it was sad. And it's such a lovely team as well. It was a shame that they missed out on that challenge.
We're
the other question,
to get them on the show too, because they're from Dunedin, which I loved because it's the place of the yellow-eyed penguins. And I do have a little cartoon character that is a yellow-eyed penguin because of my trip down there. I just love Dunedin. So I'm hoping that they'll come on the show so we could talk more about there and Baldwin Street and running Jaffas down Baldwin Street.
So probably one question that people might wonder is, when you look at the 6 tables that are allocated around the studio, there's one table that's closest to the brick pit, which, as you can imagine, is quite an advantage because it's less distance to travel.
Right.
And that's done randomly. So we pull things out of a hat. And so we have numbers and we all pull them out. And then the tables are numbered. And that's how the allocation is. So sometimes you see a team there 2 weeks in a row. It's completely luck of the draw.
Wow.
So what are your plans next? Are you have you been to a couple conventions since the show, and do people recognize you when they see you at one of these cons?
So there's a big convention coming up down in Christchurch in about a month's time. First week, it's almost exactly a month away. So that'll be the first one that I'm going to. But as previously, I've never displayed, I've never exhibited anything. So I'll just be going as a normal punter. And New Zealand is a very small country, especially Wellington. Wellington's a very small city. It's almost like a village. And there's a joke, just about every single New Zealander was in Lord of the Rings. It's not that far off. It's not that far off the truth. It's just such a small country. And so you do get recognized in the streets. I've had some really sweet encounters. Quite often it's kids just staring at me, and I don't know if it's in my face or if they recognize me from the show. So that's slightly disconcerting. But I was walking past the bus stop a couple of weeks ago, and this guy in a suit just stood up from his seat and said, "You're my kid's hero," which I thought was really quite beautiful. So there are really sweet little moments like that. And I'm looking forward to going down to Christchurch and going to the Brick Show, more so just to reunite. So I haven't seen a lot of the team members for quite some time, and obviously Jason and Rachel will be down there, and there'll be quite a few of us getting together. And it's been quite a while since we saw each other. I see Ollie quite a bit because she's from here, but overall it's just it's going to be good to reconnect with people.
Totally
now, do you still keep in touch with Karsten? Because he's back in Denmark, right?
He's back in Denmark. So we do keep in touch via messages every now and then. And he's sort of living the trip at the because he's in the Legoland theme parks over there. So I'm looking forward to trying to get a trip over there and take advantage of all of his discounts and
absolutely
free tickets.
Well, and since we're talking about Karsten, he's agreed to be on our show, and we're going to do a special episode on July 22nd. And
Amazing.
We're going to be doing that at 10 o'clock our time, which will be 7 p.m. his time. And you're, of course, welcome to join us with that. But I think for you, it may be, 2 in the morning or 4 in the morning for you. So, but we really appreciate you being on the show and for chatting with us a little bit. And are there any other thoughts you'd like to share with us, or PT? Did you have?
I was just going to ask. You mentioned earlier in the opening, you talked about you do a lot of drawing and stuff, and I was kind of curious, like, what mediums do you use? What's your themes? Obviously you said Lego is one, but I mean, when you draw, is it ink pen, watercolor? I'm just curious.
No, absolutely. I think it's a really good question. So a lot of my work is digital. So I do start with sketches and pen and paper.
Okay.
But then I quickly bring that across to a digital tablet and then do all the colors and refinement on a screen. And I mean, it's common sense, but designing in a 2D environment, in a flat environment, is completely different to creating something in 3D that's tactile and fall apart at any moment.
We're not giving you trauma now, I hope. We're forcing you to relive that moment.
That sound of falling Lego is you still wake up in the middle of the night hearing it sometimes. I think all of that design and art experience gave me a good feel for just color and aesthetics. So one of the things that I don't know if they talk about much in the show, but there's a concept of 10, 3, and 1, which is how many meters away you are from the build and what you feel. So from 10 meters away, it should catch your eye and it should make you want to go over there. So in other words, I think that's mainly talking about scale, but also design in there as well. And then about 3 meters away, you start to pick up on what it is. You start to engage with it. And then at 1 meter in, you're right up close. And that's when you start to get all the extra details that you didn't see at 3 meters away. And those are the things that they look for in Lego Masters. Is it going to be big enough to draw your eye from across the room? And then are you telling stories the closer you get? And are you adding those little bits of detail to your build? And very similar to what I do in my job is that a lot of that is around, catching the eye, using storytelling in my work is an important part because that's how you engage with people.
Yeah.
And then of course, just, good use of color.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of themes are you drawing in then typically?
For my work? So I work in public sector. So I used to work in the private agency world where I was doing illustrations. And for football companies and fashion companies. But in the last 5 years, I've moved into government.
Gotcha.
Where things have slowed down. It's quite vanilla. Like you can't afford to be too crazy. To design. But,
do you go to the Beehive in Wellington for your work?
Yeah, very close to the Beehive.
So for context, PT, there's a building that looks like a big beehive.
I think I remember on Sortland, they actually someone brought that up. Yeah,
people work
that's
there.
Where Parliament is. So storytelling becomes a real big part of what I do. So it is visual, but without a narrative, without something that's contextual that relates to you, it's just another boring diagram, another PowerPoint slide, right? So that's what I'm trying to do in government is inject a bit more creativity and design thinking, but storytelling to just be better at telling people what it is public sector are doing, because across the board we're not very good at that.
Yeah. So then Lego wise, is there anything you're building or working on, or is it
No, there's a lot of sets that I want to go out and buy.
Well, that too.
there's nothing that I'm building. Like I said, I'm going down to the Christchurch Brick Show with nothing except a lot of enthusiasm for seeing everything else that people have built. But in terms of the Lego sets coming up, I have to say I'm definitely holding out for that Shadow Box Batcave.
Oh, okay. Yeah, very nice.
I was going to say Rivendell, based on what you talked about earlier about Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. It's just
on my
like
list.
when you put these things, right?
Yeah.
Once you've built them. That's the problem.
Well, it's just like the Eiffel Tower. I mean, it's so expensive, and then where are you going to put it? And a lot of the recognized Lego fan media people who've built it because it was sent to them by Lego, one of them used it as a holiday tree, and they put ornaments on it in December.
Yeah.
And it was
all year round. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting the choices that they have made about which sets to make and the price points for those. And going back to what we were talking about earlier, it would be nice to be, more affordable. And one of the things that I like to do is on Thursdays, I focus on sets that are $20 US or less. And I think I'm one of the few people out there that does that because I want it to be more affordable and approachable to people. But I just feel that there's this big push for, buying and selling the bigger sets. And we were talking about Macarena earlier. So Spot says, "Hey, Macarena." So the Macarena is actually, we started with mock improv, and then I realized that if you're in arena, it's the Macarena. So we are now doing mock improv in the Macarena. But part of the reason why that program started was to encourage people to start looking at your mocks and just look at what you have in your collection. And one version of Macarena or mock improv is you take a set and you can only build with what's in the set. And the set is usually like a very small set, so it's not too intimidating. And people start saying, "Oh my God, I couldn't believe I built this character or this mech out of this set." And I said, yeah, that's kind of the point, is that you don't want to necessarily think about, I can't do this because I can't afford it. Is that it should be approachable to as many people. So that's kind of my little soapbox for part of the reason why I keep doing what I'm doing, is to hopefully inspire people to look at your collection. You can grow your collection, but look at the creativity behind it. And I think you brought
I love that. I actually think that constraint is really important to creativity. I think when you've got a limited resource and a limited amount of time, I think that's when you create your best work. And that was probably one of the intimidating things about the brick pit, was all of a sudden you've got almost an unlimited number of bricks and pieces. And it's quite daunting. You think that, yes, you can go out and build anything, but when you've got literally that many things to choose from, it's almost, you almost seize up. You almost get paralyzed.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, if you ever want to participate in mock improv, you're always welcome. We do that. Let me just think time-wise. So it would be kind of early in the morning for you because we tend to do that at 1:00 p.m. Pacific time on a Sunday. So that I think is what, Mondays at 6 a.m. your time, something like that. So I always have to calculate because it's like 5 hours less the next day. That's how I figure it out, at least right now.
Yeah.
But any other questions, PT, that you might have, or anybody?
No,
in the chat,
it was great talking to you,
questions?
Angus. No, I appreciate you sharing your insight of, Brickmasters or LEGOmasters, and also, what inspires you to build and whatnot. So
thank you so much for your time. And honestly, if you want me to come back, maybe in a few more episodes time, I'd love to have another chat with you guys.
Awesome.
Oh, wonderful.
We will definitely reach out to you. We're not shy about that. And please, Angus, right after the show, when we end the broadcast, we'd like to chat with you a little bit more in the green room. But thank you, everybody who's been in the chat, also who's hanging out with us. Brick Jedi, Planet Greta, Spot the Magic Ninja, Alexander 23, Brick Babe TV, anybody else who might be watching this as a recording. We really appreciate you tuning in and being here with us. And for those of you who are not familiar with Angus Deacon and his work, you can find some of his work here at Angus_Deacon on Instagram. Please follow him there. Also, our lovely host, p.t.mcewen on Instagram. Yay. He's been doing some amazing work. That's right. Yay! He's been doing some amazing work on microscale. That's how PT and I started collaborating together there. If you're curious about the show, and some of you may be able to do this, especially if you're in New Zealand, you can go to tvnz.co.nz/shows/. Lego-Masters-NZ. So
that takes you right to the page.
You can't miss it. You found that and updated it. So thank you, PT, for doing that. And everybody, thank you. You're listening to the Brickanista Broadcast Network here on YouTube and on Rumble. And please like and subscribe to the stream. That always helps and keep us engaged. And if you're also interested in Rumble, this is something new that we started doing. We're co-streaming on both YouTube and Rumble. You can go to rumble.com/user/Brickanista. For those of you in Rumble, StreamYard does not allow for chatting yet because the API hook is not into StreamYard. Hopefully that'll be coming soon. And if you are also of the handwriting kind, you can also send fan mail to Brickanista Broadcast Network, P.O. Box 87232, Vancouver, Washington 98687. It's really fun hanging out with you, Angus, and PT, of course, all the time. And thank you for liking this Brick Babe TV. And good night, everybody. Thank you. And as they say on the Brickanista Broadcast Network, thank you. And may the clutch be with you. Take care. Bye.
Bye. That was good.